We're live for another episode of Politics and Power. It's my way of lending information, or I should probably say sharing information with the public, information which is in line with my particular expertise, looking at popular, important, timely, interesting subject matters dealing with politics. So I always have to place this in context whenever I appear on the program, because Politics and Power is registered to me and it's my personal professional remit to give as much as I can, as often as I can, to the public. This is one of my requirements that I signed up for. And I may not necessarily do the program every day, every minute, every hour, but whenever it is possible, I actually do such program. And today is no exception. I'm doing this program in light of the 46th anniversary of the May 29, 1979 event. And I'll get into this in a little while to let you understand what this is, and probably to add some context 46 years after. Because one of the things that we do in terms of people who practice politics is that we observe what has happened before and we try to learn from those happenings by making comparison to what is happening now. And my title for this program is to look at Labour Party then, not in May 29, 1979, but 70 years ago, and now, to see how the dynamics of the party has changed and what has occasioned the change. So that's pretty much what I am going to be doing for the next hour. I will be here for 1 hour, and I hope that you can participate, you can follow, and I look forward to whatever question you may have coming out of my discussions today. So thanks, first of all, for being here, for choosing to follow this program, and for your willingness to participate. It would be nice if you could share the link, as some commentators normally say, share the link, share the live, let somebody know that we are on, so that we can actually have as many people as possible view this live, or actually get a rebroadcast of it sometime in the future. I will have my producer as well put the link somehow in the chat, so that you could just share that link that's going to be in the chat, if that is a correct terminology. But I've heard this being used, so I'm just using it just so we can attract as many listeners, viewers as possible. So welcome again to this program, and let me say from the onset that this program is not going to rehash the happenings of May 29, 1979. No. It is using the date to make a contemporary discussion. And one of the things that I have done, going back past maybe 15, almost even 20 years, well, maybe 15 years, is to place political events on the date. I remember as a very new, fresh, and young broadcaster, I tried to suggest that this date should not be left forgotten or avoided. And the more experienced people in broadcasting and society, society's elite, beseeched me from doing so, told me that no, we should let sleeping dogs lie, and nothing should be done to evoke the issues of May 29, 1979. But my issue was not to invoke the memories, it was to mark the moment, because this was a very interesting day in the history of our country. So I kind of left it alone until I realized when I grew up sufficiently but that it really makes no sense. Why should I not want to do something on that day because of the significance of the day? Let me go ahead and do it. So I have been, for the past 15 years, trying to do a political event. So on occasions, I would release results of a poll, I would release a book, a poem, I would do a speech, whatever the case might be. I actually tried doing something on May 29, 1979. And on this May 29, I am actually presenting this piece. I'm looking at where we are today, where we were before, and probably try to give some analysis of how we actually got where we are right now. And in particular, because we are celebrating 70 years of labor, I just wanted to place this in context for the people who had not quite experienced the May 29, 1979 issue, and probably had not spent the time to understand this thing or this idea of the Dominican Labour Party. So here we go. So we hear a lot of chatter about a 70th anniversary of the Dominican Labour Party taking place or being marked by an event on Sunday, the 30th of May. No, not Sunday, today the 30th. Tomorrow is the 30th. It's the 1st of May, sorry, the 1st of June. 1st of June. So to speak, the commencement of the hurricane season. I'm not sure whether this is symbolic, but that's the dates that they chose. The Labour Party actually was formed on May 15, 1955. So that marks 70 years. So the celebration will be taking the form of a major rally on the 1st of June, 2025 in the community of Dublin. And because that is the case, I wanted to really look to see how far back we can go in terms of the formation of the party, see where the party was and how the party has evolved, which is a very fair analysis. But before we do that, let me say that the main speaker or one of the invited guests at the event on the 1st is a lady by the name of Mottley. She is the Honorable Prime Minister of Barbados. Barbados is a sister Caribbean country, which is tinier than Dominica. And I never quite understood why a country that seemingly had a bigger reputation than our country was smaller than our country. But Dominica is much bigger than Barbados in terms of geographical landmass. But the idea is Barbados enjoys a bit more affluence than Dominica in many respects. Sports, culture, education, not quite economy 100%, but that to an extent, infrastructural development, etc., etc. In fact, just recently, not too long ago, we actually gave Barbados Ross University after we had it for like 40 years. We just gifted it to Barbados. I mean, can you imagine Barbados gifting us UWI as they actually did have UWI, University of the West Indies, their campus territory. We are not a campus territory. So can you imagine Barbados just allowing UWI to move to Dominica? Well, that's what we did when we actually gifted them Ross University. I don't have time to discuss that on this program, but it's something that makes for interesting discussion. So Barbados' Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, is going to address the Labour Party rally on June 1st. And I just felt it would be best to quote her before I get started in terms of my analysis of labor. And I'm going to read the quote that comes directly from Mia Mottley. And for those of you who are willing to read, you could go ahead and read as well, because I'm going to place the quote on the screen. I think it's just important to quote people when we have them involved in activities. And Mia Mottley, quote, "Speaking up respectfully and more importantly, speaking truth becomes a civic duty of every citizen of the country and everyone who chooses to live among us, even though not a citizen. So Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados, big sister, is telling us that we should speak respectfully, and that's what I do. No one can charge me of not being respectful in my utterances. So Sister Mottley says, speaking up respectfully, and more importantly, speaking truth. It doesn't have to be truth, you could speak it respectfully even if it's not 100%. But truth is always great. You cannot go wrong with being truthful. So speaking up respectfully, and more importantly, speaking truth, becomes a civic duty of every citizen of the country and everyone who chooses to live among us, even though not a citizen. Now that empowers me to speak respectfully about how I see the Labour Party today compared to the Labour Party 70 years ago. What I understand the change is, and probably where we go from here. That's what Mia Mottley asked me to do. But that's not all. Sister Mottley also offered another quote that I'm going to present as well at the beginning of my program, because as I said, she is going to be addressing the Dominica Labour Party on its 70th anniversary in Dominica. So I'm hoping these are the kind of things that she will be saying to us, to challenge the authority respectfully, truthfully, because it's our civic duty. The last time I think that was attempted in Dominica, a lot of people got arrested and some were battered and bruised. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about Labour Party then and now. And because Sister Mia Mottley is addressing the Labour Party rally on their 70th anniversary, I'm just using some of her words to introduce the program. Let me put up the other quote from Sister Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados. And I quote, "There is nothing to be gained through remaining silent when we know better." I mean, how profound is that statement? And I'll say it again. There is nothing to be gained through remaining silent when we know better. Missy, madam, I know better. So why should I remain silent? Why should I be scared to say what I know and what I think and what I feel in my expertise, in my field of endeavor? So I am on solid grounds here, guided by the words of Sister Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados, an admirable leader of our country, a daughter of the Caribbean soil, who says that there is nothing to be gained through remaining silent when you know better. So even if you're supporting labor or freedom or workers or TUD or what have you, you cannot remain silent if you see things are wrong and you know that it is wrong. That's what Sister Mia told us. That's why I really may want to hear what she said. I may not necessarily join the event live because I'm part of an event on the 1st of June as well in Callis Bridge. So I may listen to what was said. My focus is on the Callis Bridge event on the 1st of June. But I will go back to the recording to hear what my sister would have said in Dublin, to see whether her speech could mirror the things that I hear her saying all the time in her country. So Mia, thank you for offering me the material to be used in introducing my program. And I'm pleased with the work that you're doing for us in the Caribbean. And I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation at the Labour Party's 70th anniversary. If it is anything mirroring the things that you have been saying, I think we're nice. If not, I will come back again and analyze your speech, because you told me that I should truthfully and respectfully speak about the things that I see. And remaining silent, there is nothing to gain by doing that when you know better. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let us look at the Dominican Labour Party, where it was in the context of Dominica's history and where it is today. By doing so, I will speak about a number of leaders, players, who have sort of tracked the course of the Dominican Labour Party. And even if you may have been an important person in the party, I didn't call your name tonight, this does not mean that you omitted. It's just that I plan to do a particular thing. I have only 1 hour to do it, and I'm going to use the time as effectively as I can. I'm doing 1 hour because my team that I'm part of is having an engagement on the media right after my program. So I will tell you where that is happening in a little while. So you stay here, and then I will direct you to the traffic, because the people of my team are going to be discussing the June 1st event, Callis Bridge Casinos. So you really need to be part of that. But stay here with me for the entire hour. Then I'll invite you to join Cado's Media at 9 o'clock, right after this program. Again, if you're looking at this production after, it will not be happening in real time, but this is a real live event, so I have to promote what's happening after this event. And of course, even if it is not live, when you can also view the Cado's Media rebroadcast of the event as well. That's how the media operates these days. You have to program for now and program for it. All right. For the record, I visited E.O. Leblanc, had a conversation with him. He was one of the most famous leaders of our country. I think referred to as the father of nation, the father of our nation, for good cause. And I'll explain that a bit later. The father of our nation, E.O. Leblanc, Edward Oliver Leblanc, and of course, Patrick John was the father of independence. You don't take that from Patrick, that's it. So you may not call him the father of our nation, because I think E.O. Leblanc carries that title better, but Patrick was the father of our independence. So you have to give people their credit, where credit is due. So I've always been fascinated with politics, even before I became trained. And I have studied politics. I've interviewed all the leaders, including Leblanc, each and every political leader of our country, prime minister. The only one I have not yet had the honor of interviewing is the current prime minister. And I hope someday that changes. But I've interviewed everyone. I've spoken to everyone, and I've understood the perspectives. That's why I can handle a program like this and deal with it with a level of confidence. So the Labour Party was formed on May 15, 1955. And there were 2 major players who formed the party, Phyllis Shandolfrey and Emmanuel Christopher Leblanc. The party was formed out of a need for a progressive social movement. E.O. Leblanc was a rights activist / advocate, and he was the leader of the working class struggle. Phyllis Shandolfrey was an author. She wrote, and she was also someone who was interested in social issues of class. And she also looked at human development matters. So that explains why she was interested in creating a movement that dealt with this. So essentially, the Labour Party was formed as a movement built on the struggle for social progress. It was a broad-based coalition which included all the classes. The Malawi, the rich, the have-not, the Kalinago, Africans, everyone was involved. So that's what Labour Party brought to the table, because remember, that's 1955. And before that, the 40s was the war, the 30s, the Great Depression, the oppression of people who do not look like certain people. So the Labour Party came in Dominica on the heels of the labor unions, and Isidro Leblanc was a union leader as well. So this is the Dominica Labour Party. a mixture of different groups of individuals, a broad coalition of people who are based on progress. That's the then Labour Party. That was formed in 1955. The party took on the mantra of all shall eat. Today we have some shall eat all. And no one can deny that a few people eat more than some, than the all. So does this all shall eat mantra of Labour continue to be as was back in 1955? Anybody can answer this question. The party also was a creation of a movement to create a just society and to protect rights. To protect rights. The rights and plight of the labourer, the ordinary person. I can move forward 70 years and say today's Labour is a mixture of people and ideals led by a quasi-conservative populist leader. And the main remit of today's Labour is the protection of a winning legacy. If anybody tells me that that is not the case, prove to me that is not the case. Today's Labour is a mixture of people and ideals led by a quasi-conservative populist leader, and the main remit of today's Labour is to protect a winning legacy, which if you listen to any of the deliberations, that's pretty much what it is. No longer is Labour a mixture of ideals and ideas and cultures and vision that speaks towards progress and the respect of rights of people, the promotion of social justice and peace, and sharing in a society where we progress together. That was Labour 70 years ago. That was Labour 30 years ago. That was Labour 26 years ago. And I can't go beyond 26 years because I have been around for more than 26 years and I have not seen Labour being what Labour was designed to be past a quarter century. I cannot see it. If somebody else can see it, call, get on the program, show me where it is. Prove to me that what my vision is blurred. And I'm not here casting aspersions. I'm here speaking the truth as Mia asked me to do. And somebody else may have a different analysis. And I may say, well, I do not agree or I agree. But I am saying that Labour in 19... Well, let me go back to 19. Labour in 20... Okay, Labour in 2000. Okay, Labour in 1999, so to speak. Still carried this mantra of a movement built on a struggle to protect the rights of individuals and to seek progress, involving a broad coalition of people united under one all shall eat, the protection of rights, the creation of a just society mantra. I'm not too sure post 2000 that is still the unifying cry of Labour. And in my view, it is a mixture of people with ideals led by a quasi-conservative populist leader. And the main remit of the current day Labour is the protection of a winning legacy. That is how I do this before I speak about the different Labour leaders and where they stood, to give authenticity, so to speak, to the arguments that I'm making. And I'll get through with my arguments in about 35 minutes. I'm not going to go beyond an hour. I don't think anybody needs more than an hour to make any point. I think the point I'm making could be made in 5 minutes. But because I may want to interact a bit, I'm doing the hour for if anybody wants to join in the conversation. So I talk about the vision of the founders of the Labour Party. Isilo Black, a rights advocate and a leader of the plight of the working class. Phyllis Shandolfrey, an author who had a particular liking for social issues, and she wanted to understand human development matters. And that explains why she got involved. Isilo Black was more the hands-on person than Phyllis Shandolfrey. And in come Edward Oliver LeBlanc in 1957. He joined Labour Fight 1957. And LeBlanc was a social political visionary and also a kind of social radical with what I would like to say was an unparalleled intellect on grassroots politics in small island developing states. That's what our LeBlanc was. So he was a radical. Yes, some people may say, don't call him a radical. Yes, he was. He didn't conform to the norms. Although people believe that because he was a cooler, YII person, he would sort of suit the mold of the aristocracy. LeBlanc was not an aristocrat. LeBlanc understood the plight of people. He was a visionary, a radical one in terms of social issues. And his intellect was almost unequal in his ilk when it comes to grassroots politics in small island developing states. And LeBlanc is a case study in and of himself. So he was the early leader of the Labour Party, and he brought that to the Labour Party. And I don't think the Labour Party and the people who were around it kind of liked LeBlanc's vision too much, although that's what Labour was about. But by then, 2 years after, and the years to follow, other people who belong to the bourgeoisie, to the mulatto class, well, not mulatto, that's not a class by itself, to the aristocracy, to the plantocracy, they started to infiltrate Labour and starting to have different ideas. So LeBlanc's ideal was not sitting very well with some people within the Labour Party. They became factions in the Labour Party. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just showing you where his ideals start clashing with the ideals of the established ideals of Labour. And LeBlanc found himself very uncomfortable in Labour. And shortly after, maybe 12, 13 years after, he would have made his exit. And there's a notion that says he wanted another person to lead the party. That's not the case. It has always been Patrick John. He has always wanted Patrick. There was no other person LeBlanc wanted to. It had been based on what he saw in Patrick, or he invited Patrick to run in 1970. When there was a split in the party, he created his own party, created his own symbol, the shoe symbol for the party, the LeBlanc Labour Party, and he ran and won after this party split. They had a major faction. And the man, the young guy, at 28, he brought into the party. He told the guy, well, I think you should lead. And that's how Patrick John became leader and became premier of Dominica. So Patrick John, in terms of his leadership philosophy, simple. He lived a life of service to the little man. That's what Patrick John mantra. He made a lot of mistakes as prime minister. He didn't do his due diligence. He was cavalierish. He was boastful. He did not do things right. He received bad advice. He made a lot of mistakes, which caused his demise, illegally so. Again, I won't get into that. So I'm not making apologies for Patrick. Patrick made some serious leadership blunders, honest blunders, but he was not a corrupt person. He was just misadvised, misled by people who took advantage of the situation. Patrick he didn't have the discipline that his office merited. And it hurt him, and it hurt our country. If Patrick John had been in power in Dominica for at least 1 year, because we got independence in 1979, 78, and by May 29, Patrick was out, He didn't even have a 6 months, Can you imagine Patrick John being in Dominica's office as prime minister for 20 years? We would have been like one of the most developed countries in the world today. But he never had the opportunity. He was taken out early. Yes, he made some mistakes, but there were a lot of things that were working against him as well. So I told you about Patrick's mantra, a life of service to the little man. And then when Patrick John government fell, we had O.J. Serafin, who replaced him as prime minister. Some may want to say interim, he was our prime minister. Again, I have some issues with the legality and how the government changed, even the impaneling of parliament without a president. I can speak about that for years at a time. But parliament was convened, government fell, OJ, through the Committee of National Salvation, became our prime minister. And OJ's principle of leadership was kind of what I would like to say a crossover of social democracy with a broad ideological reach. So OJ was very ambitious about things that he wanted to do. So he was not a typical social democrat. He was a younger person who had a very active vision. And again, probably if OJ had played his cards right politically or differently, OJ could have enjoyed a longer tenure than he did. I'm talking about the leaders of Labour. Mike Douglas was also a leader, and he was a flexible social liberal who believed in communal engagement as the basis of success. That's Michael Douglas. Again, another political scientist can go ahead and change my characterization of the leaders. That's your choice. But I, after many years of understanding the material, can present the information to you in the way that I think and I feel comfortable. So I'm giving you a rundown of the kind of leaders, and what you would appreciate is that all those leaders' ideology connected with the Dominica Labour Party ideology. So far. Now, after that, there was a gentleman by the name of Rosie Douglas, Mike's brother, who is a communist, was a communist. Even in death, he's still a communist. Because that's what Rosie was. And nothing wrong with he being a communist. There may be issues with communism, but I have no issues with Rosie being a communist. So don't misquote me. I'm just giving Rosie the characterization that Rosie told me he was. Rosie told me to my face, I'm a communist. And he explained to me what that meant. And I had no issues with Rosie when he told me that. Because I worked with Rosie. Even if I don't come and boast about it, I have worked with Rosie. So I understand. I spent many hours with Rosie. I cried blood when he died. I just don't come boasting. I know Rosie. So I can say that Rosie was a radical socialist. So I find quoting it. Let's not call him a communist. Let's call him a socialist. A radical socialist. Now, does that jive with the Dominica Labour Party's vision and mission? No. Rosie was not a Labourite. Rosie was a socialist. He was a member of the DLM. That is a more left-leaning movement than the Labour Party movement, because Patrick John had issues with the leftist movement, and they had issues with him as well. They also had issues with the rights movement, the Freedom Party movement. So Patrick and the Labour Party was sandwiched in the middle of movements, putting blows on him on both sides. So Rosie became leader of the Labour Party through the death of his brother Mike, and I guess he just switched his modus operandi, still continue to be a socialist, but leading a more right-to-center party. And he only led the party for about 8 months and he died. And in come Pierre Charles, another socialist. In fact, I call Pierre Charles a leftist with a strong sense of community advocacy. And if Pierrot were alive to the Pierrot would say, because that's what Pierrot told me he was. A leftist with a strong sense of community advocacy. Edridge told me that too. Edridge Spala. And a number of people in Granby can tell you that today. That's what Pierrot was. Pierrot was not a Labourite. Pierrot was a leftist, socialist of sorts, ideologically. But when it came to the power that he got it through the mantra of labor. So he took it. So I'm showing you where the underpinnings of labor is now being led by people with a different ideology. So essentially, the last real labor leader would have been O.J. Serafin. Well, maybe Patrick John. Well, O.J., because O.J. was labor. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm showing you the chronology of the leaders who led the Labour Party so you understand what I'm saying in terms of the party's shift. Ideologies don't change. There's no way an ideology can change to a different one. So the Labour Party ideology cannot switch. New ideologies took over the leadership of Labour. And Labour is not what it was then, today. And I think I heard somebody who used to be a socialist, I think went to study in Cuba with Ruzi, didn't like Labour, now he's a Labourite, saying that ideologies can change. No. My understanding of ideologies is that they don't change. You have different ideologies that stands for what they stand for. Like Marxism, kind of was misinterpreted or reinterpreted by socialists and Leninists and different kind of sprongs of it. But the new Labour ideology is not a sprung of the old Labour ideology. It's a vast difference, and I'll show you how different it is. In fact, you can already see how different it is. So Piero left us with a strong sense of community advocacy. And the leader who replaced Piero, because Ruzi and Piero died in office. The leader who replaced Piero was Skerrit, Roosevelt Skerrit, Mr. Roosevelt Skerrit, the Honorable Prime Minister of Dominica. And people keep saying that Labour has been in power for 20 years. Labour has been in power for 25 years. Labour took power for Ruzi and Mr. Savrin. In 2000, we are now in 2025. How can it be 20 years now? It's 25. And the present Prime Minister is Prime Minister now for over 20 years. And our current Prime Minister is a right-wing, quasi-conservative populist leader. He's not a Labourite. Far from it. In fact, Piero might have been closer to Labour than the current Prime Minister, because Piero, as a leftist who has some communal idea about him, to me was closer to the Labour ideal. Because this current Prime Minister was a right guy, conservative guy. Maybe still is. But he's using the Labour brand and mantra to maintain the position that he has, because there is support for it. And it explains why there are so many freedomites as part of this new arrangement called Labour. Because the person who leads it is a freedomite. He is a right-wing guy, a conservative guy, who used popularism to lead this power-sharing arrangement. I've said so on a million occasions. Labour Party is not the party in power in Dominica today. The party is 70 years old, yes, led by somebody, but the party is in power. Well, you can say it's the party in power, but you have to understand what that means. It's a very broad coalition of many, 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 many different ideologies. You do not have the liberal ideology and conservative ideology leading America at the same time. No country that is the case. The majority in office in America today is the conservative. In the presidency, in the legislature, well, not the judiciary. I wouldn't call the judiciary a political partisan thing. Although most of the justices are strict constructionists. When it comes to the real day-to-day politics, I look at the presidency and the legislature. So the majority in both branches of government happen to be conservative. There's no mix between liberalism and conservatism. No, it is the conservative ideals and agenda that's run in America. What ideological ideal runs Dominica today? Somebody please tell me. Conservatism? No. Liberalism? No. Some people say not even democracy. I don't know. So I continue to say that what we have now running Dominica is a power-sharing arrangement that does what it has to do, when it has to do, to maintain the legacy of the people who are running the country. There is no defined legacy. If you go to Jamaica, conservative leading Jamaica. If you go to England, you have different ideas leading the countries. Dominica has not had this ideological leaning in terms of leadership for almost 30 years. Well, when Workers was there, it was more centrist, leaning, centrist leaning left a little. Well, no, centrist leaning right, because Workers was more conservative than even liberal. So at least Workers had an identity. This present government has none. Populism, that's what it is. And again, that's not a criticism, that's an analysis. For people who care to pay attention, it doesn't really matter if nobody does, at least I'm presenting it. So the next generation will say, well, somebody did put something on the record so we can have a look at. So I've really run down the list of the labor leaders to show us that the ideals of labor stopped with O.J. Serafin in terms of the ideology of the leader and how it connects to the grassroots of the party. Because with all respect to Rusi, he was not a laborite. Maybe he turned labor, but his ideology had always been socialism. Pierrot as well. Pierrot played the game, but Pierrot has always been a leftist. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in comes Mr. Skerritt, who is a rightist. He's a conservative who used populism as his benchmark, as his foundation to win. And again, I can't fault him for that. I'm just calling it as I see it. And if I had some time, I'm looking at my clock, I have 18 minutes. I could even run down to speak about the ideologies of the political parties, the different parties that were formed, and to explain why we have so many parties being formed today. I maybe can do that in 2 minutes. Because that's important to understand in the context of Dominica's politics. If you don't have an ideology to govern the people, you are really doing what you want, and the people are not properly governed. So before we had the adult suffrage and the ministerial system of government, we had a colonial government where the king controlled what happened. That changed, and then we had our own system of government started in 1958. And parties like the DUPP existed before the Labour Party, It was like a continuation of this conservative ideal, because we had other parties, union parties that existed and tried to unseat. But those parties were not successful up until the Labour Party came on the scene. And in 1961 started changing the political landscape of Dominica, representing for the small people. So the DUPP was a conservative outfit from colonial extract. The Labour Party would have been that movement I told you about, the movement built on the struggle of the people, social progress, broad-based coalition from all sectors. Everybody in Dominica was a Labourite at one point in time. Because so powerful was the brand. It came to change things, how things were done. And of course, that changed because people with interest, status quo, started infiltrating and saying, okay, we can do that. We can get power from them, and we can see it's them that's in power still, while it's us, and we can put our own ideas. That's how the ideologies grab power and change things. The Freedom Party came on the scene, I think in 1968. And the Freedom Party was a conservative outfit. It grew in Dominica out of a wider global appeal of democratic movements, which promoted the development of corporations and the marketing and promotion of law and order. Also fiscal responsibility. That is what conservatism is about. That's what Freedom Party was about. That's different from Labour. Labour is promotion of rights, the procurement of progress and goods for everybody. Conservatives say, well, rights, laws, based on the state, the power of the state and corporation, and fiscal discipline. Totally contrast from what Labour was. And herein lies the problem between freedom and Labour. They were sworn political opponents, not enemies, opponents. So we had DLM came on the scene, Dominican Liberation Movement. They were like a leftist movement. That's Ruzi and Pierrot, Riviere, Afimate, the ilk who were more towards left-leaning. And I can believe that for years if I have to, but I don't have to get too much into that. That was formed because it was believed that we need to do more to procure what we had as a people. And then the UWP came on the scene in 1988 as a centrist, conservative, leaning movement, which focused on development through investments in the productive sector and individuals. Nice brand. And they maintained that brand for the 4.5 years they were in office. And following that, there were a number of parties formed. I won't call all the names of the other parties. I'll call PPOD. There is one that was formed recently, I think called UPP, and there is TUD for sure that I know of. And people may say, well, why so many parties are being formed? And the answer to that is these are offshoots that comes from a fertile terrain in Dominica when it comes to the politics, because the old shoots, the old trees, they are not doing it again for the people. And they are still there in the way, blocking progress. So the shoots will come through. That's why you see so many parties being formed. I have no issues with the parties being formed. It is just that this idea of real unity eludes the people who decide to form so many several parties. Eventually, they have no choice but to come back to this if it's going to be successful, because as is the case right now, you need a broad coalition to unseat a broad coalition. So, in my understanding, those new parties are just signs of the times that something new, not necessarily a new party, but a new approach definitely has to emerge for us to get out of this political quagmire that we have found ourselves in. And boy, I think I have done that. I'm happy that I actually run through the parties to give us some context. We're still talking about labor. And I wanted to make the last few points before I see whether there's any question or message. So we have arrived where we are today, 70 years after the Labour Party was formed, where ideology, when it comes to governance, has all but disappeared from Dominica. In other countries, it is still alive. In Dominica, we do not have any ideological position leading the country, and that's what we have to go back to if things must be done well. And if you talk to a party that wants you to vote for them, ask them for their ideology, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. I know the party that I'm part of has it and can present it. Ask the present Labour Party what is the ideology of the party in terms of governance, and let any one of their members or their ministers answer. And they may tell you, but it is not in sync with what the party is doing today. I guarantee you it. And it is certainly not what Labour Party's ideology was. So what we have now is not Labour per se, it is an arrangement of people in power, led by a populist. Because of that, you lack accountability. If you don't have an ideology, a blueprint for what you're going to do, you cannot be accountable. And whatever you do will be done. Like the king, when the king was in charge of the government, the king did everything that the king wanted to do on a day-to-day basis. No one can hold the king accountable because there is nothing that says the king will do this. So that's what happens when you don't have an ideology running the country. The idea becomes something that sustains power, because for some, power is immunity, power is a rite of passage. That cannot be why you're in office, to maintain power. It is to do anything else but that. Power is good, but too much of it can be a problem. Mendicancy grows out of hopelessness and powerlessness. When one group have power for a quarter century, the other group and the other people, they are going to feel out of it. And they're going to rely on the people with the power who have the resources to get stuff. It is not that everybody who supports Labour supports Labour. Most of the people who are going to go to the June 1st thing event, they're not going to support Labour. They're going to go to show their face. Because their survival depends on showing their face. That's why the conversation should not be on surviving, it should be on thriving. You can show your face, but I want to show you how we're going to thrive. So you don't have to show your face, you just have to just do your stuff. So that's what happens when you don't have ideologies guiding how things are done. My view is that if this is not checked, like 10 years ago, we will continue to slide. And one of the main things I've observed, ladies and gentlemen, in our politics in Dominica today and yesterday, and in the history of our politics in Dominica, is there has been no good example of smooth leadership transition. Dominica politics has not shown any example where there has been swift and smooth leadership transition. All the parties are guilty of that, including and especially the Dominica Freedom Party. We all know what happened when Demi Jr. decided to step down and the fracas between the party. Yes, the party had a new leader, but it was never the same. So the legacy that Demi Jr. had as a leader cannot be seen as a brilliant one because there was no solid succession after her. When was the last time the Freedom Party contested and won an election? In Dominica. Parties exist to win. When was the last time a Freedom Party contested? Again, I'm not picking on freedom, I'm just highlighting the point. There has been no good example of leadership succession that was smooth in Dominica. Labour Party, the party broke up in 70. It had problems 2 years after it was formed. 57. And everything else that goes around that. Even right now, with the party in power for 25 years, who is the next leader? Who was groomed? Nobody. Because I'm hearing last election, if not scare it, who? After 20 years, 24 years, 25 years? So there has been no example of a developmental plan for sustainable leadership in politics in Dominica when it comes to the parties. And not just now, not going back maybe the better part of the last century, you know. So what we need is a fresh rehabilitation. Maybe not only new people, but certainly a new approach to how things should be done politically. Because those who are in office right now, those who have been part of the political status quo cannot do it. We will continue fighting over what happened in the past and forgetting that we have a future to plan. If you listen to the May 29, 1979 discussions today, not on my platform, on others, you will hear the same regurgitation of the old story. The youths know that story already. They may not know the version that you know, but they want to know what you have for them for the future. So my job is to analyze, to look at where we were, look at where we are, and see where we're going. And my answer to you young people is that the only way forward is a new group. New idea, new approach, new focus, not strained by the politics of the past, because one side has been out, one has been in. The one that has been out for 25 years want to be in. When they're in, those who have been in for 25 years going to suffer. If a new group comes, everybody will be okay. Because there'll not be a vendetta type of politics. We have to move past the politics of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s in Dominica. And for that to happen, we need a fresh redistribution of support and power. Yes, the people who are there now supporting will still support, but just move their support in a way that you offer them a different idea. People with money, you will continue to have your money, but more people will have money. No victimization, no picking on individuals, just a new idea to lead the country. Parce que Dominica is not poor. Dominica is one of the richest countries on earth. It is just poorly managed. So if you get people to manage Dominica in a way that everybody benefits, so why not? And that is what the new approach is. That's what I've been working with. And I'm proud to say that my TUD, Team Dominica friends and colleagues has taken up this mantra and are willing to engage anybody who is willing to have that particular engagement. Guys, it took a lot for me to get everything into 1 hour, but I think I've said it. I've made the case very simple that labor 70 years ago is not labor of today. It's a total flip. It's a 180 degrees turn from where labor was. And if anybody believes that they know better or they know otherwise, let us have a conversation about it, a respectful, truthful conversation about it, because I'm not convinced that what we have now is the continuation of what began on May 15, 1955. And when we celebrate on June 1st, I hope we understand what we're celebrating. We're not celebrating mendicancy. We're not celebrating this I alone can do it approach. Anyway, I shouldn't be lecturing people because people know maybe some of them better than I do. All right. So that is my contribution. Again, I do not know whether we have any comments. I do not look at comments when I'm presenting. But if there's any, I guess I'll see it pop up. If not, I will just go ahead and wind up, end my program for today, and get ready to join Kados Media for his 9 o'clock engagement with TUD. They're going to be promoting the River Line, and that should be a very good engagement. In fact, I think Kados, who is my cousin too, from Wesley, actually said, "What's up, sir?" Kados, I'm doing fine. Doing fine. I'm looking forward to listening to you in the next 3 minutes. The Naren Show. I'm tuned in. Naren, you are great. You're a wonderful brother, brethren, friend, colleague. I love working with you. You're one of the most amazing people to work with. I mean, Carlos is number one, but you are close. You are close. Okay? You are close, Naren. And getting closer. All right. Ricardo said, do you think elections are going to be called that day? No, man. No. I don't think elections are going to be called on the 1st. Maybe. I mean, the Prime Minister can decide to do it if he wants. But based on what I'm seeing and hearing and what I understand, I do not see why he would want to call elections. Why would he want to do that? It's not going to work in his benefit for him to call election right now. So I'm not one of those who believe that's going to be called. I think the Labour Party is doing a lot, though, to really marshal the troops to solidify their grounds. And if it is called, it's his prerogative. He could prove me wrong. But I don't know. I don't see why he would need to go to elections right now, especially in the face of this reform thing that is happening. Although he has done it while we were doing it, but I don't see him doing it again a second time. Okay, he can prove me wrong. And if he proves me wrong, he proved me wrong. I've been wrong before. But I just don't see elections being called on the 1st. Petra said, good evening, brother, my wonderful sister, friend, blood, family. You know how we work, hard work ahead of us, but we can do this. Naren came back and said, if Mia can repeat these exact lines, I will walk to Nubla, Belmarche style. Oh, that's why I love Naren, Belmarche style. I do not see her saying that. But you never know. And maybe the producer can remind us of the lines that she used in a little while after I say, good evening to my sister and friend and colleague, Dr. Simon of Push Past 10, one of the leading media outfits in Dominica, really, really hardworking media house. So it's good to have you as well as part of our program. Naren says, will a whole new group survive, or would it take a shift from current parties towards a new group? Yeah, the latter. Because when Labour came in 1955, Labour didn't bring new people, Labour brought a new idea, and people came to the new idea. So people believe that a new party will not survive. And they may be right, but no party is new. You come for a new idea, but the party depends on support of people. So if TUD comes in for a new idea and is able to impress people, those people who now support the other parties will come to TUD. This idea of splitting the vote thing that people talk about sometimes does not really add up the way people think it does. Because when workers came, they didn't split votes. They won. When Labour came, they didn't split votes. They won. When Freedom came, they didn't split votes. They won. I'm not saying TUD will win by itself, but it brings a different idea, one that I had not seen in the other parties, one that I have still not yet seen, and one that I believe in. And if the game is played right, Naren, you never know. That idea might be the winning idea. Not as a party, but as an idea with support from a broad base. Because there are a lot of labor rights right now who really want an alternative. But do you think labor rights will go and vote for UWP right now? I mean, honestly and truthfully, again, I'm not picking against UWP, but based on what we know in terms of the rivalry, I mean, what are the odds? So it's not about splitting votes, it's about attracting votes, about gaining votes. And that's what the next dispensation has to be about. So I'm so happy that the conversation is happening. I'm hearing about unity. Well, I'm happy that the talk is out now. I'm going to introduce a new idea, something called real unity, where you can say unity, and don't mean it, Real unity is what's going to take us out of where we are today. All right. Anything else? If not, I think it's time to end this program. My producers give me the wrap-up sign. So let me thank you guys for being here. We did the hour. We've done it for an hour. Thank you. Listen to the next time that we're going to be doing another Politics and Power episode. Until such time, take care. Go now to Kado's Media. He is going to host TUD. They're going to be speaking about River Lime at Callis Bridge on June 1st, where I think the focus should be, because that's going to be a traditional lime that involves cordial and light conversation. So I'm going to listen, and I expect to see you guys on Kado's Media with this big program coming up in about 60 seconds.